Hey everybody, welcome back to what used to be Movie Chatter but has now been rebranded. We are now going to be doing episodes each week under the name Media Chatter, in part because I couldn't come up with anything spiffier. But primarily because we are not just going to be doing movies. We realized, you know what, there are a lot of good movies coming out, but there aren't very many anymore. You know, COVID happened and the industry's kind of changed. Theaters aren't quite back up to what they were before. What has really taken off are streaming networks and especially streaming shows. And a lot of these shows, you know, we couldn't just cover everything that hits TV back when things were 20, 22, 24 episodes. But now we're getting a lot of really good content, and it's 6, 7, 8, sometimes 10 episodes a season. And we're not covering those, and we would really like to. So what we're going to do is we are going to alternate at some ratio between movies and streaming, and we are going to call it Media Chatter, because we are going to be chatting about various different things that we see in our media. So I'm Eric. I am here tonight with Lou and with Robin. Robin, how you doing? Yeah?
I'm good. I can't wait to record this show.
I have to admit, it has been a long time that I've been wanting to do shows. There have been a lot of shows I've wanted to talk about and haven't had an opportunity to. So I'm pretty excited about this as well. And Lou, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. And just like Robin said, I'm excited too. One thing I was thinking about when we first started talking about changing the format of the show we're going to cover is that, I really like this new, it's not really new, but this new concept of streaming shows that are 6 or 8 episodes long that tell one story that is, you get much more, you get a lot more content in a lot more detail in 8 hours of television, I'll call it for lack of a better term, instead of a 2-hour movie. They can dive into the characters more. You get more details. I'm loving some of the storytelling. And we were talking before the show started tonight about things that we've been binging lately. Yeah. And a lot of them are 6 or 8 episodes long that tell just one cohesive story.
See, so, I can't tell if you're trolling me or not.
No,
because you know what I'm about to say, right?
I don't actually.
Good. Okay. So
his crystal ball is
right.
Right.
It's so foggy today. It's raining. It's cloudy, overcast.
Outlook is cloudy. Everything you said is correct. I mean, it's nicer, especially when you're talking about character development, to be able to get a story that is told across many different segments and not try to cram it into an hour and a half. Because the more story you get in an hour and a half film, the more you have to take out other elements. And you don't have to do that in a show format. The flip side of that, as I've said before with a lot of the Marvel and especially Star Wars content, is like 7 episodes for Book of Boba Fett seems a little short. Even 8 episodes seems a little short because it kind of feels like, we grew up, the three of us, on 22 episodes being a normal season of something. So while you're absolutely correct, and it is absolutely a benefit, the flip side is it is a little bit tough when you sit down and you're like, I'm going to watch this show. It's going to be awesome. And then after a month and a half, it's gone. And you're like, well, I have to wait another year.
So, and I'm sure we'll get into this as we go forward with this show over the course of the next few weeks and stuff. But so think about Book of Boba Fett, which I agree with you. It was too short. We also had 2 episodes of The Mandalorian thrown in there.
Yeah, there's another issue.
Boba Fett as we wanted to. But think about that and how that played out versus what we're going to talk about tonight is Reacher and how that was 8 episodes was Reacher? Was that what it was?
They were also an hour long instead of...
Right. There's a lot of content there, though. And for the first 6 episodes, I think it was, or at least 5, the next episode picked up exactly where the first one left off. Yeah. So it was like one long 4 or 5 hour movie. The last 2 episodes really didn't have that same thing going on for it. But I just, we said before, I got done watching Inventing Anna, and that was the same thing. It was like, all this content was fantastic, building up this whole story. If I saw this as a 2-hour movie, I would have been, it didn't give me enough.
Yeah.
but over 8-hour television episodes, I was like, this is fantastic.
And of course, the show we're covering tonight is Reacher on Amazon Prime. Robin, were you about to say something? I don't want to cut you off before we proceed.
Well, but I mean, I feel like the screens back in the day when we were all about prime time and less about the recording and the watching later and the binging and things like that is, I feel like these are story driven just like movies, right? Whereas it was hit or miss in other type of, with either episodic comedies or even those episodic dramas, right? I feel like those were very character driven. Like you built these short scenarios of 23, however long, around characters rather than around this story. And this particular story, I think, has the potential to unfold as we're going to talk about. This is based on a whole series of novels. So this in particular has an opportunity to unfold, yes, certainly around Reacher, but also around a larger story, right? Which could just become one episode of. So I think it's kind of exciting.
I think that it's, and you're talking about the old episodes being episodic and very character driven. Back in the day, we didn't have TiVo. We didn't have DVRs. We were just getting, when I was a kid, we were just getting VHS. I mean, it had existed, but it wasn't really ubiquitous yet. So, and even then, like trying to program something, and then, if you record something on one channel, you have to not record the show you want on the other channel. And television was episodic because they knew people would miss some episodes and they would lose people. And so you couldn't make a story arc that was too tight and that defined the show too drastically because people would miss it.
And a lot of them didn't do that because for syndication, they really didn't want that concept because they wanted to play back in any order they wanted. So they couldn't, syndication was a real big no-no for that.
Syndication, big money maker. So, I didn't even think about this. We have to explain, I guess, for the young kids out there, what syndication even is. So ABC, CBS, and NBC, and then eventually Fox, those were the main primary networks. But after you get at least 100 episodes, you could then sell the show for reruns to the lesser network cable channels like TNT, AMC, who else?
Yeah, there was the Channel 20 out of New York.
Right, your local affiliates and stuff that would do the blocks of like King of Queens or, Seinfeld for a while, things like that. So, and that was a big moneymaker. MASH. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff I only saw because of syndication. MASH being an example. Right. The original Star Trek series. Things like that. So, anyhow. But now we have the ability to tell stories that are longer than movies, shorter than the old-fashioned television series, so you can get a cohesive story that feels well-paced, and yet also do character development. So as much as I wish some of these were longer than 8 episodes, you get kind of the best of all the different pieces put together. So it's kind of nice. We're going to talk about that tonight. We're talking about Reacher. So this is on Amazon Prime Video. It is, as you said, 8 episodes. It is starring, I don't have the guy's name in front of me here. Oh, yes, I do. Alan Rich.
Alan.
Your new boyfriend, right, Robin?
My new boyfriend, Alan Richson.
Yeah. So I first saw him on Titans. I think it's on HBO Max now. The DC Comics live action Teen Titans series, in which he's pretty good. He plays a slightly different character, a little bit more thuggish there than here. But I think, one of the big talking points about this series is Alan a good Jack Reacher? Because previously we've seen Tom Cruise in, was it 2 Jack Reacher films or was there a third?
I think it was only 2.
Okay. I've only seen the first one.
I haven't seen either one of those. I
recently saw the first one for the first time, and it was pretty good. Robin, what about you?
Mm-hmm. No, I saw both of them. I liked them before I saw this one, because after I started this series, I started thinking about it and reading about it, and I realized that what folks are saying out there is very true. This particular character was cast as a full character, an embodied character, and many of the the characters who play in and around him, and through him and with him in these roles, are need to react to his stature, right, to his build, and then going back to think about or even watch the Tom Cruise one, which I started to before we recorded this. I thought, no, they're right. Jack Reacher needed to be this large, muscled, certainly, right? Very fit.
Calm down,
character.
Robin.
Or
Calm
as
down.
some of the girls, I just started texting some of the women in my life who we all like to watch sort of the similar things, and I just started getting little pictures of eye candy in there because
Robin, don't be sexist.
A good actor that's.
Don't be sexist.
I'm not. I'm just saying.
Men have the monopoly on that. We've been doing it. We had dibs on this for generations now. That's our gig.
Yeah, he is. I think the writers and the directors here captured this particular character. Now that I've read more about him, and I'm actually looking forward to picking up a few of the novels. Even though I professed earlier that I don't read because I've had
says the professor.
You professors. Yeah, why would you want to read?
Yeah. I know. I read all the.
So it's interesting. I've not read any of the books. These are. This is based on the first Jack Reacher novel by author Lee Child. And what was the name of it? Lou, we were talking about this just before.
The Killing Floor.
The Killing Floor.
The Killing
Yep.
Floor.
Killing Floor.
I've seen some comments online about the fact that the character in the books wasn't supposed to be super muscular. Like he would exercise a lot, but it was like walking and stuff. So he was very fit, but not muscular. Not like any way in which he was athletic. It was more that he was lithe and slender, and it was not that he was built. But sometimes you have to let that go based on what type of media it is that you're covering, which I guess is relevant for a show called Media Chatter. Now that I think about it, maybe this is something we need to explore a little more, comparisons between books and movies and books and TV shows. But I think that it's okay to deviate from some elements of a character like that to accommodate things that are going to work better in a visual medium if it's going to add to the story. And if you're still staying true to the tone of the story and to the nature of the character. And I get the impression that it did. So I think I get the complaint, but I guess I'm okay with it. Like, I haven't read the book. So for a lot of us out there, this is going to be fine. We don't have that comparison to make. And if you do, I mean, we've been dealing with that kind of stuff for ages now. Star Wars, Marvel, science fiction books, The Expanse. Right? And you just have to roll with it. It's two different versions of the story, and you can enjoy both. And that's great.
I mean, it's interesting. The criticism of both of these Reachers goes in both directions. There were people who, when Tom Cruise was cast as Reacher, said, this is not Reacher. Like, this is not who... Lee Child was describing in these books, and then when they cast Alan Richardson, they said, "Okay, this is the perfect Reacher." I like that this is a quiet character, but a loudly quiet character. This character walks into a room and will be totally silent, and you will see an entire story play out. Yeah. Right. And I like that piece. I like those pieces.
One thing about the character that was a little bit rough for me was trying to figure out, there were some aspects where it was almost as if the character was on the spectrum a little bit autistic. And I say that for those who don't know, as somebody who was on the spectrum myself, but there were times where he seemed to lack a certain social comprehension of some types of social interactions. Kind of, I don't want to say OCD, but very rigid in many things and stuff. And so there were some things with some of the social interactions I was trying to figure out, is it the actor's not delivering things very well, or is it that he's delivering them flawlessly because this is who the character is supposed to be? And I was never really clear on that. I'm leaning toward the second. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and it would fit the character to have those elements. So I'm going to go with that. Again, I haven't read the books. Maybe if any of our audience members have, and you want to throw a comment down in the comments below here on YouTube, if you go to randomchatter.com/YouTube, let us know, because I'm a little bit curious about that. But let's talk about the casting of this show. So I think we all liked Alan Ritchson. Yes. Lou, would you agree with that?
I did.
Yeah, no, I think he did great in the role. I don't have any experience with the books, of course, but I totally bought into this character as what he portrayed.
Yeah. And he carried out the action scenes, the choreography well. He had a good presence when he walked into a room. He had good emotional delivery in the moments where he didn't have to be the big, Hulk character, and he had some more human moments. I thought he delivered those well. We have Willa Fitzgerald, played Roscoe. Thoughts on her? I thought she did well. I hadn't seen her in anything else prior to this, at least nothing I remember.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen her before either, but I liked her character. She was strong and yet also needed help from time to time, but I totally bought into her as the character.
Yeah. She's done some other things here, but nothing that I've seen. Scream, the TV series. Yeah, I thought she was good. Again, I think that she had that in the first episode or two. You're kind of thinking, oh, she's, the mousy girl who wanted to grow up and be a cop because it's her hometown and blah, blah, blah. But like, she's just kind of there. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, I'm going to kick your ass. Like, she completely.
Right.
She had depth and she had presence and she had agency, and I liked the way they wrote the character, and I liked the way that Fitzgerald played her. And I think she was a good, I don't want to say foil for Reacher, because I don't think that's really the right way to put it, but I think that she, the yin and yang there worked well, and it almost kind of rotated sometimes as far as, which character needed the other one there to kind of complement them.
Oh, see, now I'm gonna stop you there, because I actually think that the couple character here was Reacher and
I would agree with that too.
There's your couple
so,
there.
Go ahead, Rob.
I saw and enjoyed both.
No, go ahead, Lou.
The comment I was going to make, I'm probably jumping out of order here, but I thought that for the first 6 episodes, it was very consistent. Everything was what I expected. The last 2 episodes were not. The relationship between, him and her was different. She turned into the typical role of, oh, I'm a woman that needs help and this and that. And also I think some of the stuff with Reacher too, and I'm not trying to jump ahead here, but, for the entire series, Reacher was the person who would enter a conflict and be able to sort it out with very little words, good action, but very minimalized, conserve energy type action where it was done before it even started. And then for him to almost lose a fight to that wimpy little kid at the end, I'm like, who wrote this and where'd this come from? There was some inconsistencies with that only in the last 2 episodes, though. That was what really bothered me,
especially the last one.
And I think that they did her a disjustice with the way they wrote her in the last two episodes as well too.
And that's another reason I would be curious to see the books too, because I know that you can change things when you adapt a book into a movie or a TV show, but for the most part, you usually have to stick with the same ending. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, now I don't know when these books were written, but Louis said there were 26 Jack Reacher books.
That's what shows in his
they
website,
didn't start the series last year. Right? No. These have been around for a while, and of course, the culture of storytelling has grown over the years. So I'm curious as to when the first one came out, and I'm wondering if maybe they had to go back to the ending of the book series, or I'm sorry, that first book is what this season's based on.
The first book was this particular one, Killing Floor, was 1997.
And that's more recent than I would have thought. I was thinking like 80s for some reason, like late 80s, early 90s. Okay. Yeah, I don't...
Well, it's still 20 years ago. I mean...
Well, true.
Yeah.
You know, it's aged. It's, you know, I'm sure everything was updated for what it was. But
I agree with what you're saying there. For my comments about how I felt like Roscoe had a lot of agency in the series, she did kind of lose it at the end, and it did become the damsel in distress. And he did kind of struggle with a fist fight, with a one-on-one fist fight with basically a kid, or, you know, college kid.
When he, you know,
that no combat experience, and he's like ex-special forces and ex-military police, and come on.
I mean, you take a look at the fight that he had in the prison.
Right.
Versus him against this one guy in a room where he was prepared.
Or the restaurant.
And almost got
the first time he's in a fight with that same kid and two other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And he was prepared for this fight, and he was ready to just take them all out. And it was like, wait, what? Why is he having trouble with this kid now?
Yeah, that was a little confusing. I would agree with you there. Now, but that aside, though, the series itself, so I don't think that necessarily broke the series. I would still recommend the series. I think it's still good.
Oh, yeah. Not to backtrack here, but on the books for a minute, I'm looking on Wikipedia, and he's put out basically a book a year since 97 for Reacher. It's like every April or May, he's got another book out. Except 2010, he had 2 books out in the same year. But I'm like, wow, that's prolific writing.
And I have a hard time writing birthday cards to family members that frequently. So yeah, I feel bad now. Let's get back to some of the other casting here, and then we'll move back to kind of the story overall. You were talking about Finley, Malcolm Goodwin, another, I think, strong character in this series. Though again, that last episode, I kind of felt like, I don't want to say it's necessarily out of character for him, but it kind of felt like they moved him too far in the direction they were trying to take him too fast in that last episode or so. I don't really know how to describe it well, but I think that overall there was a synergy between Reacher and Roscoe, and there was a synergy between Reacher and Finley. And I thought that those two dynamics really carried this series really well. So you had a plot that was interesting and kind of made sense, whereas a lot of plots don't. And there were pieces that were laid along the way of this series. So it wasn't one of those things where at the end it's like, oh, hey, the guy you saw walk by in the background back in episode 2, he's the murderer. Like there was a chain of evidence that you could follow. Breadcrumbs leading you to conclusions that would get you pretty close to this at the very least. So you had a good plot, and I thought good character dynamics. Robin, what do you think?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that because I haven't read the novels, this is, you have to put this in a little box, but they brought these folks to life as best they could. The only issue I had was with Mayor Teal. I just thought that was the one character here that I couldn't believe had the capacity once we found out what he had the capacity to do, and because he was a caricature for me rather than a character. And so that was problematic. That particular character and that character development was problematic.
I would agree with that. I think Bruce McGill is a good actor, but I feel like he always gets cast. He gets typecast, I feel like. And he always plays the same character. And I don't think it's a lack of skill on his part necessarily. I think that it's just we've gotten so used to him being the Southern racist politician, probably bad guy, and if he's not the bad guy, he's at least not a very good guy. He plays the same character every time, and he plays it to a T, but it's like you always know that character. So again, I think that's more of a casting thing. I don't blame Bruce McGill for that. I think he's a good actor, but yeah, it just kind of like a few minutes of him on screen and you're like, oh, okay. So I kind of know, I get that character. He fits in this box and we move on. Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking over the list here. Any other notable?
Well, I just have to bring up one, and it's just because I'm just a fan of what we do in the shadows, but Harvey Guillen, he is a character on the show that we watch.
Was he the medical examiner?
Shadows, and yes.
Okay, Jasper.
Yes, he was the medical examiner, Jasper, and it was almost like walking into a party and seeing an old friend. It was like one of those things, like you didn't know he was going to be there, but then he was there. It kind of made you smile. Very small part, very small role, but it was just nice. And he had
a pretty good role.
I wouldn't watch the series just for him. Yeah.
Okay.
But
so, Lou, back to your point, I kind of feel like I liked the ending. I just finished this a few minutes before we started started this call. And I know, Robin, you were saying you watched it 3 times so far? The entire series 3 times already. I have too many things to catch up on to be able to do something like that. It's true.
That. Did you got through it, obviously, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
I didn't go through it a second time, but I finished it a while ago.
I will.
I watched it with my wife. Yeah,
I'll watch it again. It's a good series. But back to your point, though, the ending is a little rough. So, Lou, how do you reconcile the ending with still recommending this season of this show?
So was the ending perfect for me? No. Did it wrap everything up in a neat little bundle that we can then move on to season 2? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But I mean, I've seen far worse endings of shows on other things, so that weren't even that good along the way, which this really was. So I can kind of cut a little bit of slack for that.
Okay.
But I will say it was jarring to go through the series up through episode 6. I keep going back to episode 6 as being really well done and really just spot on. And I'm like, I can't wait to watch the next episode. And I got the last 2 and I'm like, that's what you're going to give me? I'm like, no, okay. I mean, I get it, but it wasn't what I would have hoped for.
It was still satisfactory. It went from great to being really good to being good, maybe even still staying really good, but the first 6 episodes were great. In my opinion, it did kind of drop off a little bit, but it did wrap things up well, and we are getting a second season. It's already been confirmed. I'm getting the impression, again, I haven't read the novels, but we're probably only going to hold on to the Reacher character and maybe Neagley, played by Maria Sten, who I thought also did pretty good. Pretty good. I think she did really well. And I would be happy to see her continue in season 2.
I think I hope what we're going to see is us getting gift characters like Neely, and possibly like the 2 younger actors who played young Joe and young Jack, right, along with versions of the parents, come and fill in his backstory for us. More members of his squads coming in and out, just to help us understand him better. But there's a piece of me that really wants some of these characters to fall away. And one of those characters, I'm sorry, is got to be Roscoe.
Yeah. So we're not going to spoil anything about the first season. Movies are a little different. Shows, we understand, takes people longer to catch up. But the implication, I think, has always been all along that the novels are kind of self-contained stories to some extent. And so the season is going to be a self-contained story. He wanders into town, he has an adventure, and then at the end he wanders out of town.
Right. He's not tied to that town by any stretch of the imagination. So to me, I expected it to be somewhere else for the next one.
Yeah. I would concur with that. So a lot of these characters we're probably not going to see again. Now, they could reappear. It could be one of those things where, he calls up, hey, I need a favor. I need you to run fingerprints. Or, it could happen. But yeah, I think the only recurring characters we're going to see are going to be Reacher, Neagley, maybe the kids in the flashbacks. Honestly, I think the flashbacks worked well in this series, but I don't want to see more of them. I'm already, longtime listeners know I'm already kind of iffy about flashbacks in the first place. I think that for the first season it worked well in kind of establishing the character, but now I feel like we've got the character. Like, we get him.
We have a hole. Is
there a hole that we need the kids to fill? Okay.
No. Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, it depends on what they do with that. I mean, I'm assuming the kids were in the book, the flashbacks of what his childhood was like. And if they do it in the other books too, they'll find a way to do it in the show. I mean, different parts of his life may relate to different things, but I think that it worked out well in this first series because we needed to know who he was, and it was what gave us his, moral center, moral compass.
Yeah. Well, and this whole season is about the murder of his brother, so it's directly tied to the story as well. And I mean, kudos to the actors who played the brothers too, Maxwell Jenkins and Gavin White. They did good jobs. I have no complaints with the actors. I think flashbacks in general should be done minimally.
Well, I think the bigger story for Jack is going to be whatever the relationship between he and his father was, because that is the hole that they did not fill here. So we saw some evolution, right, in the boys, obviously, but the father flashbacks stopped, which seemed a little cold to me. So that was my clue that there's a bigger story there that's going to unfold in more seasons. Okay,
that's fair. And I would be okay with that. I mean, again, if the flashback's telling a different story, that's all right. All right. Anything else we want to say about Reacher season 1? Again, we can't really talk spoilers too much, but we would all recommend it. It sounds like.
Yeah.
I liked this iteration better than Tom Cruise. I like the Tom Cruise movie, but I think this iteration was better. Tom Cruise, I think that version was PG-13. This is definitely more R-rated. More violence. There was nudity in 2 episodes, just brief nudity. Language was a little rougher, so not for kids.
Yeah, the violence and the visuals were
not
hard
for kids.
No, I wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas the Jack Reacher movie that I saw anyway, I think, I don't know, I'd probably be okay with my son watching it if I thought he was interested in it. I don't know that he would be. But so that's another consideration. But I have to say, I liked this version better than the movie. Sorry to Tom Cruise, but
yeah, I got to get back and watch the movie. I'm sure I will.
I got to pick up the second one. It's on my list. Like I said, catching up on stuff. But so thumbs up for Reacher season 1 on Amazon Prime. It sounds like we would all recommend it. And again, 8 episodes is not going to take you that long to binge it. They are hour-long episodes, but they move fast. And like you said, Lou, there's a lot of content packed into those episodes. It felt to me more like 12 episodes, honestly. It feels longer than it is, as opposed to other shows we talk about, like the Book of Boba Fett, where it feels shorter. than it actually is. So this was good. Good writing, good pacing. So that is going to do it for this episode of what is now Media Chatter. We are going to decide what we're going to cover next. Again, we are going to alternate, maybe not a 1-to-1 ratio, but we are going to continue covering movies as well as TV shows and maybe other forms of media eventually. But if there's something you would like to have us cover on the show, let us know. Go to youtube.com/randomchatter or randomchatter.com/YouTube, either one. Let us know in the comments below what you would like to see us cover here on this show. We are going to try to cover some of the newer streaming shows first, because there's a lot of them and a lot of really good ones. So if you have a favorite that you would like to hear us talk about, let us know. Don't forget to go to randomchatter.com to check out the other podcasts on the Random Chatter Podcast Network. You can go to randomchatter.com/store to pick up hoodies, t-shirts, sweatshirts. The weather seems to be all over the place, so pick up both a t-shirt and a sweatshirt, and you got it covered, right? Doesn't matter what the weather's doing. And, you know, that's a good way to help support the network, but then you get something for it. You get actually a good quality t-shirt and sweatshirt. I was a little shocked when Tim first signed us up for this. I'm like, oh, dude, we got to like order some first to test them out and stuff, right? Make sure they're not crap. They're actually really good. Yeah. So, and in fact, we have to get this new Media Chatter logo set up. We're going to have to got to create a new shirt. And so we're going to notify people of that in our Discord server. So go to randomchatter.com/Discord and you can join our community there and hang out and talk with us about movies, shows, Star Wars, The Expanse, Star Trek, Disney, Marvel, DC, whatever you want to talk about. We've got a lot of great people there. So that's going to do it for this episode of Media Chatter. Thank you for hanging out with us. We will see you again next week. Until then, take care.